Members, it's the appointed time and we also have a quorum. Next member to ask a question is Mr. Ted Hui, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. With regard to education policy and tertiary institutes, you have increased recurrent expenditure. I think this is a good step forward. You are giving them recurrent expenditure, but if it is done in a rush, if there is a lack of discussion, there may be controversies, and I don't want to see anything that cannot be turned back. Many members are concerned about the $30,000 who read self-financing programs in self-financing institutes. Supposing somebody gets 3322 and he wants to go to an associate program in the 8 universities, but now he is diverted to a self-financing institute. The objective impact is that there is direct or indirect competition between the associate degree programs and the self-financing institutes. Is that your intention? Because then you do not have to review the associate degree programs. Is that the objective effect you want to achieve? Did you study into that before you roll out the policy? Secretary. Between self-financing degree programs and associate degree programs, there has always been some competition, especially for students with 3322. We give these $30,000, and in fact, it has become a factor for consideration. When students consider their interests, their ability, and future, they may now also consider the difference in school fees to be paid. That is true. But if you look at the figures, since all degree programs require 3322 and associate degree programs require 5 twos, according to the latest DSE results, those who attain 3322 account for 40%, and those who get 5 twos amount to over 69%. In other words, there will be 29% of students who would choose associate degree programs. Those who attain 3322 might read top-up classes, but the proportion is very small. About 25% of the 40% will be able to get a subsidized place. Experience tells us that about 11% would read self-financing degree programs. In other words, those who have 3322 and who read associate degree programs would amount to 4%. We have these figures, Chairman. Can I just ask this direct question? Is it that the administration thinks associate degree programs do not have a value anymore, so you put the money elsewhere, so sub-degree programs will wind to a halt on its own? Is that the objective impact? Secondly, I'd like to talk about the top-up classes. When people read associate degree programs, they have the hope that they would indeed eventually have a degree. But now you attract them to go to self-financing institutes. How many of them will eventually be able to top up their degree? I think you have not considered this point. Chairman, can I continue with the first question first? I was trying to make this point. At least 29% of students would go to or have the qualification to read an associate degree. So there will not be an automatic demise of the associate degree. When we do our review, when we look at the status or positioning of the self-financing sector, we will review the associate degree issue. And then we may come to a view as to how the future of associate degrees should be. As for top-up classes, I don't understand Mr. Hui's worry, because it will just be the same as what we have now. If you get an associate degree and then you read a top-up program for a degree, we'll still be giving you $30,000 a year. Next, Claudia Mo, 5 minutes. The majority of people can find no reason to object to extra funding for education. But it's ironic that you know where these $5 billion come from. It is because we have extra land premium. Why extra? It is because there is red capital from SOEs or other enterprises coming to Hong Kong to grab land with unrealistic premium. And now the extra money is pumped into education. I find this quite regrettable because you say you are student-based, you give money to tertiary education. But on the other hand, you use academic or bureaucratic language to duck many important issues, like the line drawn between self-financing and subsidized institutes. You don't want to blur it, and then you would have to review the positioning of self-financing institutes. You are applying your administrative philosophy to blur your original promise, which is people-based. This is very unfair to sub-degree or associate degree programs. Secretary, sorry, I haven't finished. I just choked. I thought I heard somebody talking to me. You said you would review this, and then you said by then you will see whether the associate degree would have to be repositioned. What do you mean by when the time comes? Do you have a timetable? Or is it like what Mr. Ted Hui said? Do you just expect associate degrees to come to a natural death? Secondly, people who attain 3322 would get 30,000. And last time, finally, you explained that those are just for Hong Kong students. But those who go to mainland can also get $5,000, right? I think I haven't mixed it up. If I have 3322 and I go to the mainland, say if I get a place at the People's University in Beijing, can I still have that kind of money? Is it that your money will go to the People's University in Beijing? Secretary, about the associate degree, as I said when I answered Mr. Hui, if we look at the figures, I can't see how what we are doing will cause an impossibility of survival for the associate degrees, because many students who get 5.2s in the DSE will, I believe, continue with the associate degree programs. The $5,000 are given to the students. If a Hong Kong student enrolls in a designated university program in a mainland university, the $5,000 will be given to the student for paying the tuition fees. We think it would be enough for most universities. Some charge just $5,000, but some charge almost 10,000 renminbi. But if we give them 5,000 Hong Kong dollars, it can give them some relief. No, my question is, if I attain 3322 and if I go to the mainland, I will not get $30,000, right? You are correct. Those are two different types of subsidies, right? Yes, Chairman. They're in two groups. If a student with 3322 reads the degree programs at the 10-odd institutes, they would get $30,000. But if they go to the mainland to read eligible courses, they will only get $5,000, not $30,000. This has to do with the difference in tuition fee levels of the two places. And overall speaking, we are still fair. Next, Mr. Lam Kwok Hong, 5 minutes. Chairman, Carrie Lam got 5 billion, and now she is spending 3.6 billion. I think she is just catching up with what has been slashed from education in the budget. This is nothing very surprising. This is recurrent. You subsidize students to read self-financing institutes. It is a kind of recurrent expenditure, so it's a policy issue. It is not something one-off. Therefore, we need to monitor you because you are going to do it again and again. You say this is people-based, but the people have no freedom to choose the institutes. It's just like Liu Xiaobo, who could not choose where to die. The CCPE said it was people-based, but it's a waste of time. You only limit it to self-financing institutes. If people want to get your subsidy, they have to go to self-financing institutes. This kind of policy differential would cause a special bias. Those UGC-funded universities, sub-degree programs will not be subsidized. In other words, you're encouraging students to go to self-financing institutes. But you have no way to guarantee that their standards are the same as that in the colleges run by UGC-funded universities. You are forcing people to read courses, the standard of which is not guaranteed. If the students with 3322 do not qualify for university, they will go to the community colleges of the UGC-funded universities for an associate degree. But now, there is a particular policy bias. Therefore, your policy is not people-based. It is institute-based. And in the process, I don't know whether Carrie Lam talked to the self-financing institutes. They are stakeholders. So, if Carrie Lam intends to support self-financing institutes, she can give them recurrent subsidies, because that is going to happen anyway with this policy in the long term. And you are not giving us a report telling us that you have inspected the situation at the self-financing institutes and the associate degree programs offered by the community colleges of the UGC-funded universities. So you are using public money for sponsoring self-financing institutes. Students don't really have autonomy. They want your subsidy, they have to go to these institutes. Therefore, the associate degree programs would shrink, because this is going to be recurrent. If you ask us for the money, I'm telling you it's a policy. It's a policy of how you want to deal with the associate degree programs, because this is not one-off. This is a very clear bias. Can you explain that to me, why you want to do this? Is it that UGC-funded institutes did you any wrong, or do you really favor the self-financing institutes because it's $30,000 each student? Secretary. Chairman. Mr. Leung said we are not subsidizing the associate degree programs. Sorry, Chairman. First of all, as hostels for the elderly, you should first tidy up, like in hostels like Cambridge or whatnot. You should not throw money into the sea. The UGC-funded institutes have been running the associate degrees, but they cannot now develop as they were supposed to, and they would certainly shrink. So don't confuse yourselves with who you are subsidizing. You are abandoning the associate degree programs. Your time is up. Dr. K.K. Kwok, 5 minutes. He is not here. Mr. Tommy Cheung, 5 minutes. Secretary, the Liberal Party will not block this paper. But many members have mentioned the $30,000, and I like to say that it seems really your policy is biased. You are favoring the self-financing institutes. Well, it's okay if you want to help them, but I always think that if students go to UGC-funded universities and they go to the speed or space colleges, they still have to pay. So it's not who you are helping. Since students qualify for a university place, but they have to go to a self-financing course, why don't you just subsidize them across the board? Secondly, the $5,000 for mainland studies. Some members question that. I would say the only thing is you should not give so much. Or actually, these students are going to the mainland without occupying a place in Hong Kong. So in fact, I like to say you should give them more. You say 5,000 is good enough, but if you go to Shanghai and Beijing, $5,000 definitely would not be enough. But it's not a matter of sufficiency. I just say that you should take another look. Number 3. Many years ago, the Liberal Party supported the voucher scheme. Now that we have 15 years free education, the Liberal Party, in fact, does not support that, but we think you should optimize the voucher scheme. However, when you proposed it in those years, you left out over 10% of students who studied at private independent kindergartens. You said that they studied at private independent kindergartens and why you should subsidize them. But it is not that you subsidize the schools, but the middle-class parents who would like to provide better education to their kids. We always think that you would dip into the pocket of the middle class when you don't have money, and when you have money, you don't include the middle class when you dish out goodies. So I let you to think about this. If not this year, next year, the 1 odd million should be considered for providing vouchers to private independent kindergartens. I'm not saying you should give an amount which is the same as fee subsidy, but you should distribute some vouchers. Reading your paper, I believe starting from next year, it would be more difficult for private independent kindergartens to survive. Those that can will certainly have to raise fees. Or else, you are giving so much money, you're splashing money onto kindergartens. If I may go to enclosure 5 and starting from the 3rd page, how you splash money, I believe private kindergartens will certainly have to raise fees. And then it will be borne by middle-class parents. I think the administration has the responsibility to take another look at this. Many members talked about the associate degrees, but the LP is most concerned about the fact that you should spend more time on associate degrees because the business communities need these technical people.
So whether you're a driver or a pilot, even you're a chef, we have a Chinese culinary institute, but we still are short-staffed. So if you don't consider associate degrees, you should still deploy resources in vocational training, such that there can be a continuum after the associate degree. Secretary, regarding we had a lot of discussion regarding the funded and non-funded schools, but it's very interesting. Mr. Tommy Chung talked about kindergarten voucher system. It's a new thinking, and it's worth the government's consideration, whether it is feasible, whether we have some flexibility. So when we review the kindergarten education, we will consider Mr. Tommy Chung's suggestion. Regarding the 5,000 mainland subsidy, we're not footing the whole bill. It's a subsidy. It can help with some of the tuition fees. Thank you, Chairman. Next, Ma Fong Kok. Thank you, Chairman. In principle, I support the government on education spending because I do see deficiencies in the past. Of course, the CE in her campaign, she wanted to spend more on education, and after successful electioneering, she had done so. So I think it's, on one hand, it's responding to the industry's request, and the second, it is a political statement. So whether our money is well spent now, whether we can, whether there is a high efficiency, it's still questionable. We need a comprehensive review, but I still observe that the new government, they are displaying friendly gestures, and I think it's acceptable and deserves support, especially in the paper. They gave reasons for increase in subsidies. They want to nurture the youth. They want young people to contribute to society. They want the young people to have a global perspective and also be patriotic and so on. So we want also to create an education environment that aligns with our values. Of course, there are controversial items. For example, the $30,000 and $5,000 subsidy. So when we subsidize students to go to the mainland, that fulfills one of our goals, where the graduates can have a better understanding of the country. But unfortunately, you cannot elaborate on what policy you're relying on to achieve these goals. For you said just now that some funded programs are not subsidized, and some students want to go to the mainland because these programs are not available in Hong Kong. They also have to incur extra expenses. They have to travel. They have living expenses. So the 30,000 subsidy cannot be seen as fair. It cannot provide the students and their parents they do not have the luxury of more choice. I won't say they are penalized, but there is some unfairness created, and we need to review that. But I understand the CE would like to implement this new subsidy in the new scholastic year, but we see the feedback is the CE wants to appoint politically accountable officials, but there has been a lot of feedback. Some people in the education sector, they want to create pressure so that the CE and the new term of government cannot appoint certain people. So I want to ask, when we encounter this scenario, where you offer a friendly gesture and it's not reciprocated, you cannot create a harmonious educational environment. How can we have faith that these new subsidies can be efficient? And that's my first question. The second question is the $30,000. Why can't the $30,000? Why can't each student have the same level of subsidy? Some students on the mainland, they might have $5,000 tuition costs or $10,000 tuition costs. Why can't they be given more choice and allow them? They need their choices should be respected. Chairman, in our provision of subsidies, we have to consider the policy goals. The policy goal is not to give a lump sum to everybody. Students who wish to enroll in an undergraduate program, in a self-funded program in Hong Kong, they can receive a subsidy. When they apply overseas, we don't say that it has to be equivalent. We consider the actual expenditure in the mainland. Regarding the overall environment, our proposal on this occasion, it does provide some improvement, and they can operate better, and we can enhance the education quality. Mr. Kokake. Chairman, I wanted to ask about 30,000, but since Ma Fung Gok is talking about a political issue, I had to respond. Well, if you're saying that the 3 billion is a political token in exchange for having a red principle, the electrical funding is not to play political games. So we're not going to spend 3 billion and say a person who lost in an election, an extreme leftist, to serve as a undersecretary. So Mr. Ma Fung Gok and the pro-establishment camp think that they can spend some money and do as they wish. But I feel, Mr. Kokake, please, you have a ROP question? Mr. Kokake has misunderstood my views. He should not interpret my speech in such a manner. Please continue. Mr. Ma, if you continues, you feel that he misinterprets, you still have time to respond. Mr. Kokake, I understand. I have touched a raw nerve. That is, they use money to make a political exchange. I think this is ridiculous. The LegCo is now a tool for the establishment and the government, and they want to exchange a person with a political agenda to be serve as undersecretary. I'm sorry. This money should not be spent in such a manner. Coming back to the few $billion, it's penance money for the self-funded schools. We have young people who are qualified for university, and the government over the years, they have subsidized the associate degrees, and they don't increase the funding. They have been encouraged to take the associate degree in the self-funded programs, and they are laden with debt. Now they want to give $30,000. Of course, it only helps a small group, the low-income bracket. It doesn't help a lot. Second, the government is now creating a rift. Some schools will receive $30,000 as penance. Some schools, the 8 universities, they are denied. Why do we have such a bias? If you want students to have a choice, they should be able to choose subjects they are interested in. rather than the government creating second class and differentiated subsidies. Some are given subsidies and some do not receive subsidies. How can the education policy create such a rift? Why don't you allow students choice? Some schools, Miss Lao Xiu Lai might be denied, and she might be disqualified as a legislator, and you can deny her. Dr. Fernando Zheng, he used to teach at Polytechnic, and you could deny him funding and so on. Why is the government doing these kinds of things? We had a penance program that could have been executed much better, but now we see the students focusing on the subsidies. They might wanted to take an undergraduate program, but their family is low income, they cannot afford the fees, and they have to bow under pressure. The family circumstances are limited. They have to accept the government's biased program. If that is the case, we cannot accept that. We cannot allow the government to create a rift among students, amongst in the education sector. Secretary? Chairman, our policy, we had explained today why we don't include the self-funded program of the 8 universities. Well, first of all the poor, needy students, the government does have other subsidies, and we have loans or bursaries and grants. So in Hong Kong, it is a very small portion of people that cannot that are denied entry to university because of lack of funds. You also need to understand that the self-funded programs of the 8 universities and the other tertiary institutions, they have different scenarios. All our self-funded tertiary institutions, they have to be accredited, and the 8 universities have their own accreditation process. So if you want the process to be fair, well, we already have a scenario where we have these differences. It is not totally fair, and plus we have the role of the 8 universities, so we have not included the self-funded programs of the 8 universities. There is a policy consideration. It's not a matter of favoring one party and not the other. Lau Kok Fan, regarding the priority subsidies, you want to enhance the quality and remuneration of the staff. Our colleagues are very concerned about this, and Mrs. Carrie Lam mentioned that resources are very important. So I want to talk about the education system. I'd like the Secretary to address one issue. The government encourages innovation and creativity. Well, at the beginning of the year, I attended a math education report, and it mentions that in the new high school examination, students who enroll in advanced mathematics, the enrollment is decreasing. In the old Hong Kong CEE, the ratio was 25%, now it's 14%. So this will affect science, engineering enrollment, it will also affect R&D in the future. And if you look at the new high school exam, the number of enrollment in M1, M2, advanced mathematics, it is terrifying. It's only 5 and 8%. This is a very worrisome trend. Has the government examined these figures and examined the trends? The government should take action. There should be a review of curriculum design, student recruitment, enrollment. So I would like the government officials to respond on these areas. Thank you, Chairman. We have been tracking student course selection and the trends. We have fewer electives now. Students might choose 2 or 3 electives. In the past, they could choose 5 or 6 electives. So, just looking at it numerically, you might feel that there are less students enrolled in certain courses. There are different views in society. Some people are worried about economic development. They are worried about science, innovation, creativity. They would like more students enrolled in these subjects. The government, in promoting STEM education, have policies to deal with that. Some people are also worried about Hong Kong students' achievement in humanities. Do they take courses in Chinese history, literature, geography? So there are views on both camps, that Hong Kong students, there are differing views. So if you look at paragraph 7, item B, we will review our curriculum, and the goal is we want our students to be well-rounded. We have included engineering, mathematics. We also need to balance it out with sports and arts. So we hope through this review we can have a well-rounded students and achieve that in our basic education. Well, in the past there was an emphasis on mathematics, and I understand that this year the architecture program of CU is going to be different. In the past, their weighting for mathematics would be larger. Now they might just take the best 5 subjects, and so will that affect engineering quality? Well, university graduates, the universities are responsible for teaching them in the 4 years of undergraduate program. The universities, they have their own recruitment. They have the power to, they have the authorities to recruit their own students, and we would like the courses to reflect the needs, and they ought to have prerequisites, and they need to enroll adequate and appropriate students.
Leung Yu-chung, Chairman. After the new CE has taken up her office, she took 3 months to talk to the education sector about how we may spend the $5 billion she has promised during the election period. However, the teams and the people whom the CE and her team could approach are those from the profession, and she was not able to contact parents and other stakeholders. Many parents, especially parents of the grassroots children, the views have not been taken in consideration, and the funding proposal has not catered to the needs. For the grassroots families, they would like the government to provide more textbook subsidies, and that students should be given a PC and subsidized, be given a subsidy for them to go to pay the internet fees and so on, as well as payment for expenses for extracurricular activities. But I think in your proposal you have not covered that. So can you promise that in these areas you will conduct a review and provide more support for these families and the children so that they will stand to benefit? Secondly, regarding the $30,000 subvention, Secretary has already answered the question many times, but I'd like to still say that the sub-degree programs have been in operation for more than 10 years, and there's a need for review, and nobody is against that. But the point is that you cannot sacrifice the students while you're conducting the review. This time you're saying you are proposing, a subsidy, and there is also a review, so you'll not pay the student $30,000. But if you find that many students who are interviewed by the media, they are saying that because there is now the $30,000 subsidy, it will relieve the burden on the part of the families. So you're actually relieving the pressure on the families. So I don't know what is your motive, Secretary, but those benefit will only say that the subsidy will relieve the economic burden. But these students, if they are economically deprived and you still ignore them, you want to, make them the victims of your system. Do you think that is fair? Chairman, members, I've just been notified that the court has already made a ruling in respect of the disqualification of the 4 members, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 30 minutes.